You think your intelligence protects you, that because you can analyze, predict, and understand, you're somehow safer, more in control. But the truth is darker. The smarter your mind becomes, the more it turns against you. You call it thinking things through. But what's really happening is mental paralysis. Analysis as a defense mechanism. You don't live your life anymore. You simulate it. You observe your own emotions like a scientist studying a rat, dissecting every move until the feeling dies in your hands. Carl Jung once warned, "The intellect is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master." And most people today, they're enslaved by it. Your mind doesn't serve you, it owns you. Every decision is overweighed, every feeling filtered, every impulse second-guessed. You're not living intelligently, you're hiding intelligently. This is the paradox. Your greatest strength, your ability to think, has become the very thing that's killing your aliveness. In this episode, we'll expose how intelligence becomes a cage, how overthinking is emotional avoidance in disguise, and how the only way to reclaim your life is to stop thinking your way through it. Because sometimes, the smartest move you can make is to finally feel. You've been rewarded your entire life for being smart, for solving problems, for knowing the answer, for thinking before you act. From school to career to relationships, intelligence has always been your currency. The more you could explain, rationalize, or outthink others, the more approval you earned. But somewhere along the way, something subtle happened. Thinking stopped being a tool and became an identity. Now, you don't just use your mind, you live inside it. Every decision, every emotion, every relationship is filtered through that same analytical lens. You call it being careful, being rational, just wanting to understand. But the truth is, it's not understanding you're chasing, it's control. Because control feels safer than chaos. And your mind, your brilliant, efficient, endlessly spinning mind, has become your safest prison. You analyze emotions instead of feeling them. You plan possibilities instead of living experiences. You think about life instead of inhabiting it. And the worst part? You mistake this paralysis for intelligence. Society praises this state. She's so thoughtful. He's so analytical. They're deep thinkers. But Jung warned us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Thinking can illuminate, yes, but it can also blind. When thought becomes a light too bright, it scorches everything it touches. You begin to intellectualize your pain instead of processing it. You understand your trauma, but never heal it. You diagnose your emotions, but never feel them. This is the surface deception. You believe your intelligence is helping you, when in truth, it's defending you from life itself. Most people don't realize that the intellect is a psychological defense mechanism. It's how the ego protects itself from uncertainty, from the raw chaos of instinct and emotion. Jung called this over-identification with the thinking function. When we rely on thinking as our primary mode of survival, we suppress the other vital functions: feeling, sensing, and intuition. The result? A lopsided psyche, hyper-rational, emotionally stunted, disconnected from the body and instinct. You become a floating head with no ground beneath you. You understand why you're anxious, why you're lonely, why you can't act. But that understanding doesn't save you. Because understanding without embodiment is sterile. It's like studying the map of a forest while starving for the fruit that grows inside it. You think clarity comes from thinking more deeply, but clarity actually comes from presence, from contact with what is real, messy, uncomfortable, alive. And that's exactly what the intellect fears most, the uncontrollable truth of reality. Look closer, and you'll see how intelligence can become addiction. You feed on ideas, podcasts, theories, self-help books, TED Talks, Jungian quotes, endless analysis. You're learning constantly, but not changing. Why? Because consumption feels like progress. But it's not progress. It's sedation. The intellect keeps you busy understanding, so you never have to risk becoming. You scroll through knowledge to avoid silence. You think to avoid feeling. You analyze to avoid surrender, and society rewards you for it. We live in an age that worships cognition and mocks embodiment. Productivity replaces wisdom. Opinions replace experience. We mistake cleverness for consciousness. You can dissect the psychology of love and still not know how to love. You can explain anxiety perfectly and still wake up shaking. You can philosophize about purpose for years and still feel hollow. Because intellect doesn't touch the soul. It only describes it from a distance. You might not realize it, but overthinking is a sophisticated way of not living. It's a way of protecting yourself from failure, embarrassment, rejection, grief. You say you're processing, but you're really postponing. You're waiting for the perfect clarity that never comes, because clarity isn't the precondition for action. It's the result of it. Jung understood this intimately. He warned that when thinking dominates, the unconscious retaliates. The more you try to think your way into control, the more your body rebels. Through anxiety, fatigue, depression, emptiness, your psyche starts whispering, "Come back, feel something, live again." But you can't hear it, because the noise in your mind is too loud. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Smart people often fail at life, not because they're lacking something, but because they can't stop trying to understand everything. They overcomplicate the simple. They overanalyze emotion until it becomes meaningless. They'd rather be right than real. You tell yourself, "Once I understand this, I'll move forward." But understanding becomes an infinite loop. The truth is, your obsession with understanding is how you avoid uncertainty. And uncertainty is where life actually happens. When you intellectualize your feelings, you don't resolve them. You repress them under a layer of logic. When you analyze people instead of engaging with them, you don't protect your pure self. You isolate yourself. When you think about taking risks instead of taking them, you don't become wise. You become inert. This is how intelligence turns into self-sabotage. The mind that once served your growth now serves your fear. The more you think, the less you feel. The more you analyze, the less you act. The more you understand, the less you trust. You call it discernment, but it's really distance. You've built a wall made of thought and called it wisdom, yet deep down, a quieter voice knows something's wrong, because despite all your insight, you still feel stuck. Despite all your knowledge, you still feel lost. Despite all your control, you still feel powerless. That's the shadow of intelligence. You believed your mind would free you, but it only refined your chains. You're not stupid for falling into this trap. You were trained to. Our culture prizes intellect because it's predictable, measurable, marketable. But the price is your humanity. You were taught to think your way through life, but not to feel your way through it, to solve, but not to sense, to explain, but not to experience. And that's why you wake up every day with a restless mind and a numb heart. Transition. Promise, but this is just the surface. The real reason your intelligence turns against you isn't just habit. It's psychological. It's rooted in the unconscious, in how your psyche tries to protect you from chaos by turning thinking into armor. And that armor slowly becomes your prison. Because the real danger isn't that you think too much, it's that you no longer know how to stop. You think your mind is protecting you, but in truth, it's feeding on you. Every time you overthink, analyze, or replay a moment, your mind consumes psychic energy, life force that could have been used for movement, creativity, or love. Jung called this psychic energy libido, not sexual in nature, but the vital current that animates your entire being. And the tragedy of the modern intellect is this: most of that energy never leaves the head. It gets trapped in endless mental loops, thinking about action instead of acting, talking about change instead of changing, dissecting emotion instead of feeling it. The energy never flows downward into the body, into sensation or embodiment. It stays locked in analysis, an engine running in neutral, burning fuel, but going nowhere. And that's why you're tired all the time. Not because you do too much, but because you think too much without doing anything real. At the core of the intelligence trap is dissociation, a psychological split between thought and experience. The mind builds walls around the self, saying, "If I can just understand this, I can control it." But what you're really doing is protecting yourself from feeling powerless, chaotic, or out of control. Sigmund Freud called this intellectualization, when we replace feeling with analysis to avoid emotional pain. It's one of the most sophisticated defense mechanisms, so elegant, so invisible, that most people never see it. You don't say, "I'm scared to feel grief." You say, "Let me think about why I'm grieving." You don't say, "I'm lonely." You say, "It's probably an attachment pattern rooted in childhood conditioning." And in doing so, you exile yourself from the very experience that could set you free. The overactive mind is like a nervous system on constant alert. It simulates every possibility, every danger, every future outcome, thinking it's preventing pain. But what it's really doing is recreating that pain internally, again and again. Neuroscience confirms this. When you imagine a stressful event, your brain activates the same neural pathways as if it were actually happening. You don't just think about pain, you relive it. Your body tenses, your cortisol spikes, your heart rate shifts. The mind's simulation becomes a self-inflicted wound. This is the neural cost of overthinking. You are biologically exhausting yourself with imagined realities. But why do we do this? Because thinking gives the illusion of control. Jung understood that when the ego feels threatened by the unconscious, by instincts, emotions, or unpredictability, it doubles down on intellect. It tries to understand what it secretly fears. The more anxious you feel, the more you think. The more you think, the more anxious you become. It's a perfect closed loop. Fear fuels thought. Thought amplifies fear. You believe your thinking is the cure, but your thinking is the disease. And it's not just self-defense, it's addiction. Your mind gives you micro hits of dopamine every time you analyze something, every time you feel like you've figured it out. That small rush of clarity becomes reinforcement. You chase it again and again, more analysis, more insight, more false control. Meanwhile, your body starves for real experience. Your emotions flatten. You stop trusting intuition, instinct, spontaneity. You mistake numbness for peace. This is how intelligence becomes dissociation. You start living about life instead of in it. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Overthinking is that absurdity, an elegant escape from the rawness of living. And this is where the real damage begins, because once your psychic energy gets trapped in thought, it's no longer available for creation, connection, or transformation. You become mentally rich, but spiritually bankrupt. The intellect feeds, but the soul starves. You may appear successful, sharp, articulate, composed, but underneath, there's a growing sense of disconnection. You watch your life instead of inhabiting it. You understand people, but don't feel close to them. You have opinions about love, but not the courage to love. Your intelligence becomes a parasite, devouring every spark of spontaneity that makes life real. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. But the overactive mind hijacks that space. It fills it with noise, endless hypotheses, interpretations, calculations, until there's no room left for intuition or choice. Your freedom doesn't disappear all at once. It dissolves quietly, one overanalyzed moment at a time. You don't notice it because the intellect disguises paralysis as productivity. You're thinking things through, being responsible, waiting for the right time. But behind those phrases is fear. Fear of uncertainty, of failure, of surrendering to something you can't predict. Here's the psychological mechanism in its simplest form. The mind's true addiction isn't to truth. It's to control. And control is a form of fear wearing the mask of intelligence. The irony is devastating. The more you try to control life through understanding, her life slips away. You become like a scientist dissecting a butterfly to understand flight. By the time you're done, all that remains is wings without motion. And yet, there's hope in seeing this clearly. Because the moment you realize your mind is not you, that thinking is a process, not an identity, you begin to reclaim your energy. Every time you stop the spiral of analysis, that psychic energy returns to your body. You start to feel again. You start to sense again. And in that aliveness, you rediscover something the intellect could never grasp: presence. Transition. Hook. But the most dangerous part isn't what your mind does to you. It's what you don't realize you're doing to yourself. Because behind the addiction to thinking lies something even deeper, something you've been afraid to face. Your intellect isn't just trying to understand life. It's trying to protect you from the pain you've never allowed yourself to feel. And that is where the real confrontation begins. You tell yourself you are smart, careful, disciplined. You take pride in your insight, your foresight, your ability to see patterns where others cannot. And yet, there is a shadow beneath that brilliance, a darker, unacknowledged force quietly shaping your life. Because intelligence is not neutral. It is not inherently good. It is seductive. It is a weapon. And like all weapons, it can protect, or it can destroy. Here's the truth most people refuse to admit. The intellect you worship is often your escape from yourself. You are hiding. You hide behind logic when feelings become uncomfortable. You hide behind analysis when uncertainty arises. You hide behind insight when action is required. Carl Jung warned us, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Your shadow is the part of you that feels powerless, impulsive, vulnerable. It is the part that wants connection but fears rejection. It is the part that craves presence but is terrified of chaos. And the more you intellectualize, the more you bury it. Think about your relationships. You say you are being helpful, supportive, or available. But beneath that lies fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of looking foolish. Your kindness is not always generosity. It is a sophisticated form of control. You make yourself available so others need you, because if they need you, they won't leave. You over-explain, over-analyze, overthink, because if they understand you fully, they might reject you anyway. You dissect their emotions, not to connect, but to protect yourself from the unpredictability of raw interaction. Your intellect becomes a shield, and that shield is also a cage. The people who drain you the most are reflecting something you refuse to see. Your compulsive need to understand and control is mirrored in others, who trigger your insecurities. You call it manipulation. You call it toxicity. But sometimes it's simply a mirror, showing you the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. This is shadow work in practice. The world is a reflection of your hidden motives, your unprocessed emotions, your fear masquerading as reason. Freud observed that unconscious patterns drive us far more than conscious intention. Your intellect is your unconscious ally in avoiding self-examination. You are brilliant at observing the external world, but blind to your internal one. You need to confront the terrifying possibility. You are complicit in your own imprisonment. All the overthinking, all the analyzing, all the mental simulation, it is you, keeping yourself small, safe, and unfulfilled. You've built an intricate network of rationalizations to avoid facing discomfort. You tell yourself, I need more information before I act. I can't make a decision until I understand every angle. I'm just being careful. But what you are really saying is, I am afraid to feel. I am afraid to be wrong. I am afraid to be alive. This is your shadow speaking, the hidden self that craves courage, connection, and chaos, but is trapped beneath layers of intellect. Here's another brutal truth. Your mind is not just avoiding discomfort, it is addicted to it. Each mental spiral, each cycle of overanalysis gives you a hit of pseudo-control. It feels productive, meaningful, sophisticated. Yet it is precisely this productivity that prevents you from engaging with life in any authentic way. The irony is exquisite. The very trait you prize most, intelligence, is your mechanism of avoidance. Viktor Frankl captured this elegantly. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But you haven't allowed that challenge. You have insulated yourself in a self-constructed cage, thinking that understanding the world is equivalent to mastering it. Shadow work requires radical honesty. You must admit, you fear being stupid or wrong. You fear loss of control more than you fear regret. You use intellect as armor, even as it isolates you. You secretly enjoy the superiority your mind provides, even as it imprisons you. You are not just overthinking, you are protecting yourself from the parts of reality that feel too dangerous to inhabit: vulnerability, imperfection, uncertainty, emotion. And here's the uncomfortable part. These fears are often rooted in trauma. Your intelligence is a sophisticated trauma response. It learned early. Feeling deeply is unsafe. Thinking deeply is safe. So now, as an adult, your brilliance masks the scars you refuse to confront. You are the master of understanding, but not the master of living. Lee, it's talk about embodiment. Your body is trying to speak. It is trying to remind you that life exists beyond thought. Your gut reacts before your brain rationalizes. Your instincts sense danger before your intellect interprets it. Your emotions are signals, not problems to be solved. But you have trained yourself to override this wisdom. You dissect sensations, intellectualize intuition, and rationalize emotion. Your intelligence, meant to serve you, has become a sophisticated anesthetic. You are alive, but you are not living. You might feel anger reading this, shame, discomfort. Good, that's your shadow poking through the cracks. Those reactions are proof you are still alive beneath the layers of thought. Shadow confrontation is not easy. It asks you to admit your kindness is sometimes selfish, your wisdom is sometimes fear, your control is sometimes cowardice. But only when you face it can transformation begin. You must step into the parts of yourself you've hidden. You must feel fear, imperfection, and uncertainty without trying to analyze them into non-existence. You must release the illusion that intelligence alone can save you. Because when you do, something incredible happens. The same intelligence that trapped you becomes the very tool of liberation. Not by thinking more, not by understanding more, but by integrating, connecting mind to body, reason to feeling, observation to experience. Now that you can see the game clearly, here's the truth. Your mind is not evil. It is a mirror, a tool, a reflection of unacknowledged fear. The next step is paradoxical. Stop trying to outthink your life and start experiencing it. Intelligence will no longer be your cage. It will become your ally. But first, you must embrace the parts of yourself you've been hiding from for years. Here's the paradox. The very mind that trapped you can also set you free. Intelligence isn't the enemy. Overthinking is. Intellectualization is. The addiction to understanding before acting is. When you integrate your mind with your body, your instincts, and your emotions, intelligence stops being a cage and becomes a weapon of presence. The first step in the power shift is embodied intelligence. Stop thinking your way through life and start feeling your way through it. Engage your senses. Notice your breath. Listen to the subtle cues in your body that tell you when to move, when to act, when to pause. This is not anti-intellectual. It's strategic intelligence, a mind aligned with life, not floating above it. Alfred Adler said, "Follow your heart, but take your brain with you." This is the balance you've been missing. Thought without feeling is empty. Feeling without thought is chaotic. Together, they are unstoppable. The second step is decisive action over endless contemplation. Overthinkers are addicted to the illusion of safety. They convince themselves, if I just analyze this long enough, I'll make the right choice. But there is no perfect answer. There is only action. Even imperfect action produces clarity, momentum, and energy. The paradox: the smarter you are, the more powerful you become when you dare to act. Your intelligence will calculate risk, anticipate obstacles, and guide strategy, but it must not dominate the impulse to move. Third, reclaim your psychic energy. Every hour spent trapped in thought is energy stolen from living. Begin small. Turn off the mental loops. Let emotions flow. Let intuition guide simple decisions. Trust your body's wisdom. Viktor Frankl reminded us, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. By redirecting your energy from obsessive thought to presence and action, you reclaim life itself. Fourth, embrace vulnerability as strength. Your fear of being stupid or wrong has fueled your overthinking. The power shift occurs when you confront that fear head-on. Speak without rehearsing. Act without perfect knowledge. Make mistakes without judgment. This is the intelligence trap inverted. Real authority comes from authenticity, not certainty. People respect presence more than precision. They feel connection more than correctness. By releasing your need to control, you paradoxically gain influence. Fifth, integrate shadow and self. All those patterns you resisted, fear of failure, need for control, emotional avoidance, can be transformed into fuel. Use them as signals, not obstacles. Your weaknesses are actually untapped strengths when acknowledged consciously. Jung wrote, "The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. Step through it. Claim your full self. Then your intelligence works for you, not against you." Let's apply this practically. Interrupt overthinking loops. When you notice analysis paralysis, pause and ask, what is one small action I can take right now? Move energy into the body. Physical movement, touch, or even breathwork reconnects mind and sensation. Engage emotion consciously. Instead of intellectualizing fear or anger, name it, feel it, and respond. Practice imperfect action. Start small, fail fast, iterate, and embrace the learning in real experience. Reflect, don't ruminate. After acting, observe the outcome without judgment. Learn, don't spiral. The transformation is profound. Decisions become faster, more aligned, and more effective. Relationships become deeper because presence replaces analysis. Confidence replaces the endless search for certainty. Life feels richer, immediate, and alive. This is not a reduction of intelligence, it is its evolution. You move from cerebral paralysis to strategic mastery. You move from observer to participant. You move from fear-driven control to conscious, embodied power. Here's the ultimate paradox revealed. The intellect that once trapped you now becomes your superpower. Because when thought is integrated with feeling, action, and intuition, it is unstoppable. Your former weakness, your overthinking, is the seed of new strength. Your former paralysis, your obsession with understanding, is the foundation of decisive mastery. Your former fear, your need for certainty, is the doorway to courage. This is how true authority emerges. Not through knowledge accumulation, not through cleverness, not through intellect alone, through integration, through presence, through mastery of self. Imagine your life 6 months from now. You move with intention instead of hesitation. You make decisions fluidly, grounded in both reason and instinct. You connect authentically with others because you're fully present. You feel your emotions without being consumed by them. Your intelligence no longer isolates you. It illuminates the path forward. This is the power shift. This is the liberation from the intelligence trap. This is not theory. It's practical, urgent, and life-changing. And in the next section, we will bring it home. How to take this awareness into immediate action. Challenge yourself and cement a new reality where intelligence empowers rather than imprisons. Now here's the ultimate challenge. Will you continue hiding behind your intelligence, or will you step into life fully? Ask yourself, how much of your life have you observed rather than lived? How many moments have you dissected instead of experienced? How many relationships, opportunities, and emotions have you sacrificed on the altar of understanding? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? That's the point. Transformation always begins with discomfort. You have spent years thinking yourself safe, rational, and superior. But at what cost? The cost of aliveness, the cost of intimacy, the cost of freedom. The intelligence trap doesn't release you by theory. It releases you by action. You must feel, sense, move, fail, and act imperfectly. You must stop running simulations and start inhabiting reality. You must meet uncertainty not with fear but with curiosity. Your shadow, your fear, your compulsive mind, they are not enemies. They are your guides. They point to the areas you've neglected: embodiment, emotion, intuition, presence. Face them, integrate them, and watch your intelligence transform from a cage into a compass. Here's your immediate task. Pick one area of life where overthinking dominates: relationships, work, or personal growth. And take one small, decisive action today. No analysis, no waiting for certainty, just action. Ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Am I living life or just thinking about it? Share honestly, reflect deeply, and confront the truth within. The path is not easy. It is unsettling, but it is liberating. Your mind, once your prison, can now become your greatest ally. Step into presence. Trust your instincts. Embody your intelligence. And for the next challenge, be ready to confront another paradox that quietly rules your life.